Hello and welcome into another episode of Lockdown Wolves. It's the post-game pod from the Timberwolves. Closer than it should have been win over the Wizards. We'll talk about what happened in this one and why the third quarter was a disaster, the exact opposite of the second quarter. What happened that made this game closer than it should have been? It's up coming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Lockdown Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. That's right. The number one sports podcast network is Locked On. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Thursday, everybody. And it's a victory Thursday. A bit touch and go there. Not that it was ever really in doubt, but the Wolves beat the Wizards by 11 on Wednesday in a game they led by as many as 27, including 25 at halftime. There was no reason this game should have been as close as it was. We'll get into what happened. How Minnesota dominated the first half, specifically the second quarter, was up 25 at halftime, and then suddenly found themselves up by as few as 5 points in the fourth quarter. The second and third quarters just got flipped on their head, or I should say, the game got flipped on its head because the second and third quarters were complete opposites. We'll talk about what happened in this one. I want to dive into my three big things is where we'll start. Yes, we'll talk Naz Reid. We'll talk young players, Dillingham, Jaylen Clark were part of the highs and the lows in this one. So a lot to get to. It's all coming on the show here today. Big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. So what went down here? First setting the stage. Of course, Washington's 1-12. They just got blown up by another miserable, I think, 2-win team by Brooklyn the other night. They haven't won since, I don't know, it's been like almost a month. Really bad. And Alex Sarr, who is their probably most promising player, maybe even their best, greatest impact player, missed his first game of the season. He was questionable coming in with the toe injury. The first game he's missed all year, he missed this one. No Jaden McDaniels for Minnesota, so that does matter. That's the stage, okay? Minnesota's favored by 15.5 on FanDuel coming in, and it looked like every bit. It looked like it was going to be every bit of a 20-point blowout. Minnesota was up 5 at the end of the first quarter. Kind of a lackadaisical defensive first quarter, but they got whatever they wanted offensively, and it was clear that Washington was not interested in being in Minneapolis and playing a basketball game. Like, they just were not inspired at all. Lazy defense, no help defense, guys essentially shrugging their shoulders on blow-bys, stuff like that in the first quarter, right? Second quarter, complete domination. Timberwolves outscore Washington by 20 points in the second quarter. That means they're up by 25 at halftime. My first big thing is Naz Reid's second quarter, and I guess even beyond that, the Timberwolves overall, their second quarter. Minnesota did not commit a turnover in this game, not just in the second quarter, in the game until midway through the second. It was like 6.5 minutes left in the second quarter before the Timberwolves committed their first turnover, which is crazy. The Wizards didn't score until midway through the second quarter. It was like right before that first Minnesota turnover was the first Wizards bucket of the second quarter. They were 0 for 8. Well, actually, I think it was maybe right after the Timberwolves' first turnover. They were 0 for 8 with 5 turnovers to start the quarter. Minnesota was, leaning into Naz Reid, certainly pulling the trigger on seemingly everything every time he touched the ball. But overall, Minnesota was just getting up shots at a really rapid pace. Good shots early in the game. They launched, I think, 13 threes in the first quarter. I think they were 5 of 13 or 6 of 14 or something in the first quarter. I think it was 13 threes they shot in the first quarter, which is awesome. Naz Reid was a big part of it late first, and then overall in the second. I think he had 18 second quarter points. Overall, Naz finished the game with 28 points on 21 shots in just 27 minutes. And the ball movement was crisp. Minnesota was whipping the ball around the perimeter. Driving kick game was strong. They were throwing it into Rudy when he was flashing into the paint. He was kicking it back out. Like, it was pretty seamless. The flow in the Timberwolves offense was refreshing, honestly. And I know the Wolves have had a great offense. They were a top 5 offense coming in, but sometimes, as with any offense, it could stagnate, right? And we saw a little bit of that in this game. We saw a lot of it in the third quarter. We'll get into that. But in the second quarter, the ball was whipping around the perimeter. The Timberwolves were doing a really impressive job at exactly that. Naz Reid was a huge part of it. They didn't turn the ball over. Overall in the first half, I mean, what did Minnesota end up with in the first half? 71 points in the first half overall. Extremely impressive. And I guess extending this first big thing even more, our guy Jack Borman, who of course does the live postcast following every Wolves game on this YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, Lockdown Wolves, actually, no matter where you're listening or watching, the episode before you, audio or video, was Jack and Luke on the postcast. Be sure to tune into them on a nightly basis after the Wolves play. Jack tweeted this out during the game. He said 2 stats tell the story of the first half. Points off turnovers. Minnesota had 21 points off turnovers. Washington had 0. And at halftime, Washington had 10 turnovers. The Timberwolves had 2 turnovers at halftime. And again, didn't turn the ball over at all in the first quarter and a half of this game. That's my first big thing, is how impressive all of that was. And I know the Wizards are bad. I get it. You still got to do it, as evidenced by how bad things went in the third quarter. And this is my second big thing, a complete opposite take in terms of the first one was rosy and positive, and the second one is the opposite. The ball movement absolutely stopped in the third quarter. Like, there was no ball movement. And it got worse as the quarter wore on. Like, right when the quarter started, the Wolves had a couple nice possessions. I believe they pushed it to 27 points. Yeah, 27. Let's see, 27. I think I got it to 27. Maybe that was late for second quarter. It was 27 points. But the first half of the third quarter was okay. Got down to about 15 points about midway through. Conley got fouled on a 3, made his free throws. The ball movement wasn't great. They were kind of forcing it. They got bailed out of the foul on the 3-point attempt. Julius Randle got to the free throw line a couple of times. Gobert was kind of offensive rebounding. Activity was good. Again, 25 at halftime. It's down to 16 with about 5 minutes left in the quarter. And then all of a sudden, there's just a complete drought. Minnesota does not make a field goal from the 6:21 mark until the 2:09 mark. So they went almost 4.5 game time minutes without scoring, and they score off of a Jaylen Clark tip-in off of an Anthony Edwards miss, which my broader point here is the Ant pressing at the end of the third quarter became a real thing. And this was classic. Like, I actually think on the call, Jim Peterson on FanDuel Network said something to the effect of, Ant's got to put on his Superman cape right now or something like that. And he tried to the tune of like 3 or 4 straight possessions with misses, tough misses, step back 2s. And then on the play where Jaylen Clark eventually made a tip, that was off of an Ant missed layup that he forced. Actually, that wasn't a bad shot. He just missed it. But it was too many isolation possessions. It wasn't exactly like watching D'Angelo Russell from Monday. If you watch the Mavs-Wolves game on Monday, D'Lo was allergic to passing occasionally, and that was really a thing Monday as well. But it was just the exact opposite of the second quarter. Lack of ball movement, which led to Ant isolations because he's thinking, I got to pull a rabbit out of my hat because we cannot score. I have to be the hero. And then what happens? I mean, that feeds into the issue. Just like any basketball team, the Wolves offense is best when there's crisp ball movement, when guys are getting open shots and therefore they're easier shots to make. And the quality of shot went down when the ball movement slowed down. And it's not just Ant. Like the Ant was trying to be the hero, but it was beyond Ant. There were a lot of issues with the Timberwolves offensive flow. And I mean, Ant himself was, let's see, what was he in the third quarter? He made his first shot of the third quarter, and then he missed 3 threes in a row. Then he didn't touch the ball or he didn't shoot the ball for a while. Then he missed 3 2s in a row. So he missed his last 6 shots of the third quarter, 3 threes and 3 2s. He was part of the problem for the Timberwolves, and the offense completely stagnated. They scored just 23 points in the third, and they allowed 36 to Washington. And I wouldn't say Minnesota looked as sluggish as Washington did in the first half, but they didn't quite look with it. In fact, it was shades of some of the bad losses the last couple of years against bad teams in the third quarter. Thankfully, Minnesota had built a 25-point lead at halftime. And so this thing was still a 12-point lead going to the fourth quarter, even if it didn't feel like it should have been based on how bad Minnesota played in the third frame. I want to talk about my third big thing here next, and a couple more quick ones, and then we'll talk about individual studs and duds here to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Quo. Let's talk about something that every business owner knows too well: missed calls. When a customer tries to reach you and can't get through, that is money slipping away. Quo, spelled Quo, is the smarter way to run your business communications so you never miss an opportunity. Quo is the #1 business phone system built for 2025, not 1995. It's simple, modern, and designed to help you communicate faster, look more professional, and stay connected wherever you're working. Perhaps the best thing about Quo is that it works right from an app on your phone or your computer. You don't need an extra device. You don't need a clunky old school landline. And perhaps the AI would be my next favorite thing about it. The built-in AI is awesome. Use AI in a lot of places in our lives. Why not use it here? It's a game changer. It logs your calls, writes summaries, and even sets up follow-ups automatically. You could try Quo for free at quo.com/lockdownnba. That's Quo, Quo.com/lockdownnba. And yes, you can even keep your existing number. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress, I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If you're prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rougiette, that's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code, LockedOnNBA, so they know that we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses, start making moves. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And again, thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. That's right. We're the #1 sports podcast network now, and we could not do without you, our loyal and valuable and dedicated listener. Again, thanks for making us your first listen every single day. All right. My third item in my three big things. We'll talk about Ant here in a minute, but I want to hit. We'll call it the lapses from the young kind of fringe rotation guys first. And I'm combining a couple of things here to make this a theme, and that's Jaylen Clark and Rob Dillingham. Now, Jaylen Clark is a lesser offender, to be very clear, but I'm going to lump these guys together because they're the two new young rotation newcomers, and also because I really pumped up Jaylen Clark on yesterday's show. Talked all about on Wednesday's show about how he's the second most important defensive player right now, or second most valuable defensive player to date this season through the first, at the time, 14 games, this side of Rudy Gobert. All the metrics point to Jaylen Clark being phenomenal defensively. The lineups with Jaylen Clark and Jaden McDaniels are really good defensively, even with Rudy off the floor. But the Jaylen lineups with no Jaden are better than the Jaden lineups with no Jaylen, which is extra confusing because their names are like two letters off. But the point is, Jaylen Clark's been awesome, and he was amazing in the first half of this game. He heat-seeking missile, pickpocket steal after a defensive rebound for the Wizards, just crazy, streaking down the floor, gets those steals, the rebounding, the offensive rebounding coming out of nowhere. Just incredible stuff. I talked about the tip in the third quarter that helped kind of stem the tide when Minnesota was struggling to score. All true. However, he also had some lapses. There were, I think, consecutive possessions or 2 out of 3 possessions where he went under screens on the defensive end of the floor. One of them ended in Chris Finch calling timeout and screaming at Jaylen Clark, "You have to go over." I'm sure with some other words mixed in there. And I can't remember. It might have been, I think it was probably Keyshawn George that hit the 3. But every team comes into these games with scouting reports, right? Like you go under against certain guys. You don't go under against CJ McCollum, Keyshawn George, Chris Middleton, although he's shooting less threes now, Trey John, like certain guys you don't go under against. And Jaylen Clark did that more than once. And he's an amazing defender. And usually it's the opposite problem. He's overplaying things. He can get called for fouls. He gets himself in a position where if he doesn't get an offensive foul call, he can, the offensive player can use the lack of space almost as leverage to get a shot off. Like some of the positioning stuff with Jaylen Clark, he can be a little over aggressive, and which is like saying my greatest weakness is I try too hard, I care too much. Like it's a little bit like that, but it is a real thing. In this game, for the most part, he was awesome. There were just a couple of those lapses, and it just came at inopportune times for Minnesota. And I don't like this. It's not solely him. Like he was much better than Rob Dillingham was in this game. It's just a reminder of like, hey, the 7 and 8 spots in this rotation, especially when Jaden McDaniels is out and TJ Shannon is injured, and even if he's healthy, we're talking about young, inexperienced guys. Jaylen Clark in his second year actually playing at the NBA level, even though he's been a pro for 3. Remember, he missed his whole first year due to injury. TJ Shannon, a 5-year college player, still just in his second year. Rob Dillingham, literally still a 20-year-old in his second year that has not earned consistent rotation minutes. There's going to be moments like that. And it's why it's important that they play now, try and get those kinks worked out against the Wizards on a Wednesday in November instead of against the Nuggets, the Thunder, the Lakers in April and May. And that was very clear in the third quarter. That's just a lapse when it comes to game plan. It's maybe not fully understanding what the job is in that position or in that situation. That's just a mistake for Jaylen Clark, those types of plays. And it could really cost you depending on time, opponent, and game situation. Rob Dillingham, for his part, I thought had a pretty good second quarter stint. I mean, most guys did. They played really well in the second quarter. Again, missed shots, missed some open shots, but I thought pushing the pace. Sometimes when Rob Dillingham shoots a shot that for some guys it wouldn't be a great shot, it's an okay shot. Because first of all, he's got to find a rhythm. Second of all, I'm pretty confident the coaching staff has told Rob Dillingham, hey, look, man, if you get separation, you're open, let it fly. Plus, if there's a guy like a Rudy Gobert or a Naz Reid that's down in the paint in position offensive rebound and you have an open shot, take the shot because you're going to make it or we're going to get a good shot at an offensive rebound. And that's what we saw. And I thought Dillingham's shots, even if slightly forced, were largely within the flow of the offense and in the broken floor secondary break situations in the first half. And I was totally fine with really the majority of his shots. The third quarter, or early fourth quarter, I guess, was a bit rockier. The decision-making wasn't quite as crisp. There was defensive lapses from Dillingham, and he ultimately scored 2 points on 6 shots, missed his only 2 threes. He did have 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals, and no turnovers. So again, just like with Jaylen Clark, it wasn't like this was bad Dillingham performance. It was just uneven. It was just inconsistent. And it's more of a reminder of like, look, that's what we're going to get out of these guys. That's what we're going to get out of first and second year players playing for a good team. You're going to get some of those moments, even in a game that they otherwise play well in. And so this is like most other Rob Dillingham games where it was uneven. It was a roller coaster. There were moments where you're like, all right, there's the guy that's a lottery pick. There's a top 10 pick right there. There's other moments where you're like, all right, he's 20. He's a 20-year-old that hasn't played very much. I can see why. It's a bit of a catch-22. He's not playing because he's not playing well. And when he plays, he doesn't play well, which means he plays less, right? Like that's the vicious cycle that these bench guys have to deal with. It's the same reason why Josh Minott never carved out a role in Minnesota, right? He had a short leash. He couldn't, get out of his own way when he got on the court. And then ultimately, it's obviously a bit of a second round project versus a number 8 overall pick you traded up for, but still, it's the same idea. So a bit of an uneven performance from Dillingham, and overall that was, kind of the story for both Jaylen Clark and Rob Dillingham. And I thought as much as they were both part of the Wolves building that lead that ultimately was 25 at halftime, they were also part of Washington getting back in the game all the way down to a 5-point deficit early in the fourth quarter. The other thing that kind of fits into my middle point with my 3 big things, and also kind of a precursor to studs and duds in a way, Anthony Edwards, another rough shooting night for Ant. He's just pressing at this point, and I'm sure there's some, like with the injury stuff, it's a little stop and start at the beginning of the season. It's not smooth right now for Anthony Edwards. He hasn't shot over, like his last 3 games, he's been 36% or worse from the field. He is 2 of his last 23 from outside the. Actually, no, I'll take that back. He is 2 of his last 23, but a worse number since last Friday's game against the Kings. Ant is 3 of. Let's see if I can do this math. 3 of 30. Is that right? Yeah, he's 3 for 30 from outside the arc over the last 4 games. That is not good. That is 10%. In case you wanted some help with that math, I can do that math for you. 10% over his last 4 games from outside the arc. And overall, Ant has shot under 36% in each of the last 3 games. He was much better in his first 3 games coming back. The first game back against the Knicks was not great. Very good in 2 games against Utah and Sacramento. And then from last Friday through now, so Friday, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, over the last 4 games, the shooting has not been good from Anthony Edwards. And especially the last couple games have been rough. It's going to even out. He's going to be fine. There's obviously a lot of regression to the mean. I mean, he was so good in those 3 games prior. He was 17 of 32, which is also insane, well over 50%, or not well over, a little over 50%. And then, yeah, he shot 10% in the next 4. That's how this thing works. Don't worry about Ant. He'll be fine, but he's pressing a little bit, and that's led to more jumpers and less free throw attempts. The Denver game, he had 12 free throw attempts. The Sacramento game before that, he had 12. Over the last 2 games, he had just 7. The minutes are down slightly. A lot of garbage time against Dallas, yes. But he's just pressing right now. And he'll right the ship here very soon. All right, we'll close the show here today with Studs and Duds. We'll peek ahead to the rest of the week and what's up coming up next for the Wolves. Do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at SKIMS. When SKIMS announced they were making underwear for men, the reaction made perfect sense. People have been talking about SKIMS comfort for years. Most guys, though, stick to whatever they've been buying since college. You know how it goes. The same fits, the same waistbands that roll, which is a big problem, and a whole lot of settling for underwear that isn't great. SKIMS Men's changes that. One upgrade, and it's obvious why everyone has been talking about it. SKIMS was kind enough to send some product. I'll tell you what, they are fantastic. Extremely comfortable, waistband that doesn't roll, don't ride up, the whole thing. I completely get the hype. They're designed to feel good, fit right, and actually stay put with no slipping, sagging, or adjusting. Just genuinely great underwear that makes you feel confident and comfortable. My favorite type of pair that I asked for them to send was the Stretch 5-inch. I like a little bit longer of a boxer brief. It's the boxer brief Stretch 5-inch. The fit, the fabric, they don't feel too much like workout underwear, but they're comfortable when you're walking a bunch all day. Like I said, they don't ride up. They don't lose their shape. It's awesome. They hit where they're supposed to on your thigh. No matter what you're doing, it feels better than anything you've worn before. And you wouldn't think underwear can be a game changer, but SKIMS completely surprised me. Shop SKIMS Men's now at skims.com. When you place your order, choose podcast in the post-purchase survey and select this show from the dropdown to let them know that we sent you. Plus, the SKIMS holiday shop is open. So if you're looking for the perfect gift this season, SKIMS has you covered. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. The NBA is now more than a month into the season. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of any given game, maybe you just want to ride the hot hand, you can live bet on FanDuel from everything for who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks and more. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every single game exciting, especially when your team is making a late push. Also, tonight, Thursday Night Football, Bills at Texans. Buffalo was favored by 5.5. Houston's got a really good defense. Buffalo's obviously been a little disappointing, kind of up and down this season. They're benching Keon Coleman, one of their key receivers, but the Texans don't have their starting quarterback in CJ Stroud, so I see both sides of this. I think the Bills win. I don't mind Texans plus 5.5. I think the defense is good enough. The secondary is good enough. I would maybe go, I don't know. I kind of like Texans plus 5.5 if you're going to bet this game. Wolves, of course, don't play again until Friday. Don't have a line yet for that one. But again, you can live bet. You can do same game parlays. Whatever you want to do to keep the game more exciting, you can do it at FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, studs and duds from this one. Obviously, studs have to include Naz Reid. 28 points on 21 shots, 11 of 21. Squeezed the trigger 21 times in 27 minutes. Impressive work. 5 of 10 outside the arc. The second quarter was huge. I think he had 19 or 21 of his 28 the second quarter. 5 boards overall, not bad. 2 steals, 1 assist, 1 block. So 3 stocks for Naz Reid. 3 of his 5 rebounds were offensive. And again, like also hit a big 3, I should say. I think it was in the fourth quarter when there was a bit of a back and forth where the game was hovering around 6 points, 9 points, 5 points, 9 points. And Naz hit a big 3 from the right corner that kind of swirled around and went down. That was a big shot for him. He'd missed a couple before that, but this is a good Naz Reid game. He continues to play extremely well here of late, which is of course very important for the Timberwolves. Let's see. You look at his last few. He had 28 in this one. He had 22 on 14 shots in just 23 minutes against the Mavs. He had 19 on 11 shots against the Nuggets. So he's double figures in his last 4 and 5 of his last 6, and he's 20 plus or 19 plus in each of his last 3. And the 3-point shot is falling. He was 5 of 10 in this, so he's over 50% each of the last 3 games. Last 3 games combined, he is 12 of 23 from outside the arc, so just a shade over 50%. Really, really good Naz Reid performance once again, and awesome to see him playing so well here of late after a rough start to the season. Julius Randle was a big part of the second half for Minnesota to kind of, I don't want to say keep the Wizards at arm's length, because it was more like, I don't know, half arm's length, forearm length, something like that. But Julius had 32 points on 11 of 19 shooting. It continues to be a bit of a rough patch outside the arc, 1 of 4 on threes. But he got to the line 13 times, which, by the way, I didn't talk about this earlier. The Wolves shot 32 free throws in this game. Washington shot only 12 free throws. It's playing style. Minnesota is certainly more physical, but also avoiding fouling defensively, which was something I talked about on the pregame show or the preview on yesterday's show is huge, and they did that. 32, 10, and 6. Another very nice line. Not quite sniffing that triple-double range, but to have, a 30-plus points, 10-plus rebounds, and 5-plus assists, in this case, exactly 10 rebounds and 6 assists, is a really nice performance. Also, only 1 turnover and 1 foul committed from Julius Randle in this game. Kind of stayed within himself. It was actually a pretty quiet 32. It was just like he was there. It seemed like every time the Wizards made a push, Julius did something, which was really, really nice. So a good performance from Julius Randle. I don't really have a third stud. I guess you'd go Rudy Gobert. He had 7 offensive rebounds when the Wolves were scuffling offensively, kept some stuff alive. He did have 4 turnovers, but I thought the activity level was pretty good for Rudy. Only missed 1 shot. If I had to pick a third star, it would be him. A third stud, it would be Rudy Gobert. DiVincenzo had a quiet game. Mike Conley ended up with 10 and 6. Somehow Mike Conley attempted 9 free throws in this game. I mean, there was the foul on the 3-point shot. There were a couple of, savvy, hey, we're in the bonus, I'm going to make sure I draw this foul type of plays from Conley, which are, much needed. So I thought overall he played well. Talked about Naz. We talked about Jaylen Clark's up and down game. I mean, honestly, like if it wasn't for some of those defensive lapses late, Jaylen Clark turned in a 7.5 rebound, 3 steal, 1 block performance in 26 minutes. Really nice. Shout out to Bones Highland, who had a nice first half stint. Of course, no Jaden, still no TJ Shannon. He played a little with Dillingham, and then he played instead of Dillingham, and overall I thought was pretty good, despite not doing anything offensively. I thought Bones fit in fairly well. No real duds in this game either. Nothing to write home about for Conley, DiVincenzo, but like nobody just had a bad game. The first half was so good, and the third quarter was so bad. It all kind of cancels out, and then ultimately the Wolves held on to win. So no real duds from this one. A sluggish second half, to be sure. As fun as the second quarter was, the second half was like a root canal, I'd imagine. Never had a root canal, but I can imagine that's what that was like. Just not good. But again, no Jaden McDaniels. What they did in the first half is something that they didn't necessarily ever do in the past couple of years against bad teams, which was jump all over them. And even though it didn't quite last, it was still an effective overall performance, as ugly as it was at times. Next up, Minnesota travels to Phoenix to take on the Suns Friday evening. It's an 8 p.m. tip. And then has the weekend off. No game Saturday or Sunday. We'll talk about Phoenix on Friday's show. We'll preview that matchup. Phoenix is playing better of late. They're 9 and 6. I know I keep talking about how bad the schedule is. Well, Phoenix has really righted the ship. They've won, 6 of their last 7, and their only loss was a 2-point loss to the Hawks. They're playing much better. They're actually 9 and 6 right now after starting the year 1-4. And what, 1-4 and 3-5. Is that right? 1-4 and 3-6 is how they started the season. And then have played much better since then. Not that they've beaten a lot of good teams. They've beaten the Pelicans, Mavericks, Pacers, but they also just beat the Blazers. So we'll talk about that on Friday's show. Be intriguing to see Minnesota go on the road and play a team that's playing fairly well compared to the Wizards of the world and some of these other teams they've beaten here recently. So we'll talk about that on Friday's show. Among other things, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. A big thank you for making us your first listen, and a reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show. Our guy Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. You can find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Reminder, the same network that this show is on as well, the Locked On Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.